Let's be fair and balanced here. Does the president have a point?
He might have a little bit of a point in that some of the new conservative sites farther out on the right, more conspiracy-minded, probably aren't showing up very much in Google search results. Beyond that, Fox News, which of course he loves and watches religiously, comes up all the time. And you know, we here in D.C., we hear this from politicians all the time. You know, you only write the bad things. And the answer is that that's kind of what the news media does. It's a common critique, and it's something we hear a lot from the president.
Mark, what's been the response from Google?
Nothing beyond the statement this morning. I think, you know, I talked to some folks there that claim just that this is outrageous, right? That the idea that Google does this intentionally. They dealt with this 2 years ago with the notion that they were suppressing negative search results about Hillary Clinton, and they didn't come out, I think, at that time with a full-throated endorsement, but certainly privately they've said that. You know, part of the issue here is that Google for 20 years has been pretty secretive about its algorithm and hasn't shared a lot of details, and so that can flame these sort of conspiracy theories. And to Ben's point, they have, like Facebook and Twitter, done a lot this past year dealing with criticism in the other direction, that they surface news disinformation, and so they've tended to weed out a lot of sites both on the right and the left, but predominantly on the right, and that's what sort of led to this moment.
Kate, you've spent a lot of time in Washington. What do you make of the fact that, you know, Google, Facebook, Twitter, they are all under attack by the president? I mean, do you think they actually have something to worry about?
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they're big platforms. They become big companies. And when you look at the top largest companies on the planet, a lot of them come out of Silicon Valley. So, of course, they're going to be in Trump's crosshairs. And particularly for someone who cares about coverage, these are now communications platforms. And so he's going to hear and read about himself and the people he cares about all the time. I do think they have something to potentially be worried about or involved in. You see them starting to take a much bigger role in Washington. They all have large offices, as we know, and starting to have more communications. More senior people will be showing up there next week to talk to the Senate Intel Committee on the broader issue of Russian meddling in the election and how we prevent it going forward. So I don't know that you know, worry about it. I certainly, everyone worries about overregulation, but I think they can't avoid, as you point out, Mark, being a, you know, something that needs to be discussed when we talk about communications, and is it fair and equal?
Ben, White House advisor Larry Kudlow said they're taking a look at Google. This is at the same time that Google is exploring expanding back into China with a censored search engine. What could the government actually do here?
In terms of news, there may not be a lot that the government can do. There is a liability shield that internet sites enjoy for third-party content. And if you were to cut into that, Google would probably face a lot of libel suits and things like that. I have not seen a lot of appetite to do that in Congress. I've heard a lot of threats. I have not otherwise heard a lot of appetite. The Federal Communications Commission might also have a little bit of a nexus here, but again, they just have shown no appetite generally to do this sorts of thing. What I would be looking at is whether or not the government can do things on privacy, or as Kate said, Russian election meddling that would otherwise hurt the company. Now, whether that's for coverage of Trump or something else, I think that's what they're looking over their shoulder for right now.
To that point, Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, and perhaps someone from Google, we don't know yet, will be testifying before Congress next week. Google has said they would send Kent Walker. Congress has said that's not good.
It's not adequate enough, yeah. And just our reporters this morning spoke to Senator Burr, who chairs the committee, and some other senators, both in the Republican and Democrat, that said they want the CEO. They want Sundar Pichai, but they're not going, as far as we know right now, they're not going to subpoena Sundar to arrive.
Why not?
Why not the Senate subpoena? I don't know. I've heard some theory.
Why wouldn't Google say
Why wouldn't Google send Sundar? You know, Google's former CEO, Eric Schmidt, loved this kind of stuff, right? This is what he was. He loved getting in front. He was partly the CEO and chairman to do that so the founders didn't have to. I'd say Sundar is much more in the mold of the Google founders, right? He is a product guy. He's in engineering. He loves being up in front of the company. He loves being at the developer conferences. He does not love addressing politics, and certainly doesn't love sitting in front and being grilled by senators.
Kate, is Google making a mistake by not sending their top executive?
You know, I think they're missing an opportunity. I think Sundar's an incredible communicator and can be. And I think part of it is, you know, that seriousness that that now Facebook and Twitter are showing, I think is well received in Washington. I think it's well received by the public, because remember, we're part of the audience here too. So I think it is a missed opportunity. One of the challenges for all these companies is, data has been one of their biggest assets. Their algorithms are one of their biggest assets. So they should be also playing a role from a shareholder point of view, and also perhaps making sure they're in the conversation to defend part of their assets that are so important while being responsive to the public. And I think not having somebody senior there makes their voice have less clout in the middle of this conversation.
Let's take a look at the market reaction here, because you have companies like Apple and Amazon continuing to hit new highs. Facebook, meantime, really got punished after their latest results. We're also seeing Alphabet not quite keep up. Right. I mean, do you think that that is a result of all of these controversies?
Well, Facebook, clearly, because part of their issues with their users were the impact of GDPR, the privacy rules in Europe, that reduced, if you have to authorize and sign on, and allow your data to be used or not in different ways, you end up with fewer subscribers, which is what Facebook saw, and that drove some of their results in last quarter. So I think that's been a direct connection between what can happen with a regulatory body and what happens with valuations. So it's quite direct in that case.
Ben, how can we expect these hearings to proceed next week? What are Democrats saying about the latest tech DC kerfuffle?
Absolutely. I mean, as Mark said, they're pretty annoyed that Google wants to send Kent Walker. I think what they're going to drill down on is the November elections. Is going to say, are Google, Facebook, and Twitter really doing their part? As far as they can control things, are we ready for these elections? Are they identifying foreign actors fast enough? Does it go beyond Russia? Are they doing their part? What I think is very interesting is that I think Jack Dorsey, when he testifies over in the House on the same day, is going to face a lot of these questions about anti-conservative bias that today we're asking about Google.
Well, and people on the left have at times the same criticism of these social media companies. I mean, they really are in a difficult position. And also, do we want them to be making these decisions?
I think it's always scary when you allow any human beings, any of us, to make decisions. Whose decisions are we going to make? I think the thing that certainly Facebook and Twitter have been doing, Microsoft, FireEye, you're going to be talking to the CEO later, which will be exciting because they played such a big role here, is they are becoming more transparent. There are conversations, and I think Senator Warner's proposals will be discussed next week. Things like labeling bots, labeling where your source of information is, just like when you read a paper, it's really great to know who the byline is from, whether it's opinion or fact. I think all that's really important. So I think there's going to be a very different conversation as we go forward, and you're right, both sides care about this.
Right. To Ben's point earlier, though, I think the major issue is how liable they are for that content. I think we can play a drinking game next week for the congressional hearings about how many times they'll say we're a platform, right? But these Facebook and Google in particular have benefited from these massive media businesses where they are collecting advertising revenue based on content they are not responsible for hosting, and that's just been doing that for years, and they dominate the industry, and they've depleted publishing in large part. So I think the sympathy is sort of running thin.
They've certainly made a lot of money off this business model. Okay, Mark Bergen, Ben Brody of Bloomberg News, Kate Mitchell, Scale Venture Partners. Great to have you back here, Kate, on the show.
Good to see you.
Sticking with Google,